Well, so today I am talking to Sacha Hughes. Hello, Sasha.
Hello, Vic. Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you
Welcome.
very much.
Right. I would say it's amazing that the technology works so well over vast distances, but in this case, it's not true, is it? But
It's not true.
no, it's not. So, traditional first question is, what do you do?
Great first question. So I am a single mother to two gorgeous children who keep me very busy, nearly 10 and nearly 12. However, the last 3 years, I have been deeply invested in writing my debut novel called Love, Grief, and More Sex Than Pinot, which I have here,
Yeah, good,
which is
good
very much a,
advertising.
yes, thank you. You can see I like pink. Yeah, it's very much a Bridget Jones meets Fleabag vibe about a girl called Soho Summers who has a heart with no off switch and is desperate to meet Mr. Right. Um,
That's that's a very good elevator pitch there. Well done.
Thank you very much. All in
So,
training.
so you've said that this is your debut
Yes.
novel. So you've never written anything before at all.
No. I mean, I've
Right.
always loved writing, but that's like letters to people, journaling, etc. But no, I have never, ever, ever written a book before.
Right. Okay. So, but this is an interesting point because you said you like writing, right? So let have you if you take yourself back to the beginning, is it something that you were always interested in reading and writing, or is it just something that you go, well?
I think I have always been interested in reading, not necessarily as a younger kid. I kind of grew into it, throughout my teen years. But in terms of writing, I've always felt it's a beautiful vessel to just get my feelings onto the paper. And in latter years, I suppose it's then become a therapy that I didn't even realize I could use, like my very own therapy. That's
Yeah,
how
yeah,
I've
yeah.
kind of lent upon it now. But yeah, I'm the kind of person, if you write a birthday card, I don't just write on the one side, I write all over the sides, on the back of the card, and then cover the envelope too. So I guess I've always had that in me
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah,
get the
yeah,
words out. Mm.
yeah. See, this is interesting because, like, if you felt that you've always done that, that's the
Yes.
sort of thing that you do. Because I think there's a lot of people who do stuff like that, and they don't realize that maybe that is their way of engaging their emotions or their ideas, just getting it out of their head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think and you mentioned things about it being like a therapy, because I think this is
Mm.
important. Because obviously being involved in music, I tend to engage people with that when they're learning to like write songs or do things about the emotional aspect of what it is, because I think we tend to not do that. So
Mm.
when you get that sort of thing that you would engage with, uh, like as you say, sending cards, because a lot of this stuff is not as common now as it was back in the day, is it?
No, it's not actually. You're right.
Because I was thinking about a little while ago about like how many Christmas cards I used to send out.
Yeah.
It was just ridiculous. And now I hardly send anything. So
I know.
that I think that's interesting if you've come from a point in time when that was quite a common thing to do. That maybe that's something creatively that we, as a society don't actually do that much anymore, would you say?
I guess so, and it's a real shame actually, and a detriment I think to people's mental health. There even go down that route because it is a way to express yourself and freely. When you can just journal and then suddenly do 2 minutes of journaling and something comes out and you weren't even really aware that that was something that was triggering you or bothering you, and then it gives you a little signpost as to what might need your attention, what you might need to focus on. But it's also the creative side where you can. I found with my writing, like I've had such laughs with it. I have roared with laughter. I've been kind of sat at my desk for the last 3 years. People are saying, "Gosh, so antisocial, you don't come out anymore, you know, what's wrong with you? We're a bit worried about you. The truth is, I've been having the best time. I,
Yeah.
yeah, I've been laughing. I've been in the pub with my friends in the book. I have sobbed a lot. A lot of the book is about grief and a girl losing her mother. So personally, I've been reopening a lot of old wounds, but with a much older hat on. So I've been able to process that hurt with the wisdom that I've gained over the years. And as a result of that, it's been phenomenal because it's actually led me, when I said it's the therapy, it's led me down this healing route, which I didn't realize was going to be happening at the time. But after 20 years of clinging on so tightly to the pain of losing my beautiful mum when I was 24, I have finally been able to let go of that pain. I still love her, but I don't have the pain. And so this book has been the most amazing godsend to me. Like, I'm so grateful to the universe that it gave me the insight to put pen to paper.
Okay, let's go. Let's talk about this. You
Yeah.
know, about your mum. Um, you know, that's obviously one of those seismic events in
Yes.
life, particularly when it happens so young.
Mm.
Um, so what was the situation there? You said you were young. You were sort of in your early 20s. Um, as long as you don't obviously mind sort of talking about it.
No,
But
no, I don't mind.
um, so what happened? Did she? Was it a sudden
No, it was
thing?
actually breast cancer. So she'd had it on and off for, I don't know, about 5 years, had been in remission, you know, jubilant. Yes, she's going to be fine. She got the all clear, you know, all those amazing moments where you think, oh, thank you, God. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And not that I'm particularly religious, but I always believed in the power of a greater energy out there and the creator. So didn't really know who I was saying thank you to, but just thank you. And then, yes, probably when I was 22, I was backpacking. I'd just finished at uni, and was 3 months into my year-round trip in Australia, drinking a beer on the beach with my boyfriend at the time. And one of my sisters called and said, "It's back." Like literally soul destroying instantly. With it, I was on the next plane home. And then Mum died about a year after that.
Yeah,
She fought so hard. I mean, gosh, yeah, to see the lengths that she went to, hats off to her. She was the most loving, beautiful wife, mother. She couldn't have tried harder for any of us. But I think the tables turned when she realized she was fighting a battle that she wouldn't win. And so she took the executive decision to stop the treatment, the chemotherapy, and to enjoy the last few weeks of her life as much as she could, holding, you know, the reins of her own life in her own hands rather than being in a hospital and having all the treatments and stuff. So we looked after her at home, which was the right thing to do. Uh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Um, that is something that I can resonate with because
right.
you know my girls lost their mum and they were younger,
Oh, I'm so
and
sorry
also
to
there
hear
was a
that.
lot of and that period of time beforehand
Yeah.
where you have that oh my God, I didn't expect this to happen type of
Mm.
thing, you know, and then you're dealing with that. So it wasn't like somebody had an accident and died, you know, because I don't know what that's like. I mean,
Oh my God,
that must be
seriously.
such a difficult
Oh,
one. So
yeah.
with that sort of process where you're trying to get your head around what that means and how you connect, as you say, you connect with something because you have an idea that the world runs in a particular way,
Yeah.
and then suddenly you find that actually that was not what you expected is quite a difficult thing for a young person to deal with, I think.
It was, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interject or interrupt.
No, but I
It,
think that's, you know, it is that the impact when people lose a key member of the family, and obviously the mother is totally the most important person in a family,
mm,
and for children to deal with that, and again, you said that she'd had that for a while.
mm,
So I mean, you know, you were when she first was diagnosed, you were probably what, 19 or something,
yeah, I
which
was.
is, you know, it's probably that's a really difficult time, I think. So how? how did you, obviously looking back on it, you would go, and you did say that was it was a you cared for her at home and everything.
Yeah,
So that, looking back at it, was the thing that you'd go like, well, that was great because we did that and we had the time to do that.
100%.
But it doesn't, I'm guessing it didn't feel like that at the time.
No, I mean, at the time, I felt, oh, I was just deeply upset. I mean, excruciating pain inside, but also trying to be brave. So you're dying inside, but you're trying to be brave for your mum, your dad, your siblings, all the guests. You're kind of, the surface level chit chat that goes on when people are coming in for cups of tea and to say goodbyes, and the artificial positivity, keeping that up. There was a lot of anger. I was furious. I was furious at whoever this person was that was taking mum away from me. I was also furious that it was my mum, like, which sounds awful now. I mean, it is what it is. But at the time, as a 24-year-old, I'd look at my friends and think, well, why is it my mum?
Yeah, exactly.
Why is she the one that's being chosen? And I'll be in the pub and they'd all be talking about their trips out, dinners with their parents and, family things. And I would feel I was angry, and just so angry. And then when mum actually did pass away, weirdly, for quite a while, I also felt this anger to her. I mean, I was one of the feelings, there's so many feelings, but one of the feelings was anger to her, as in, how could you have left me? What on earth are you doing? You've never left me in my life. I've always known where you are. You've always been there for me. And now you've gone. Like, are you kidding me? And if you've gone, where are you? Come back. Like, it was all of that stuff. So I didn't quite know. I had all these feelings. And then I also had all this love for mum, and I didn't know where to put it. I
Yeah,
genuinely didn't know where to put it.
yeah, yeah. I know, and so my girls went through all of that as well.
Mm,
It's a strange thing, sort of like that grieving period of, and also the fact that you're angry that you've been sort of let down,
mm,
and and it's not fair and all those sort of things. And of course, after a while, it does take a while for you to sort of be able to step back and go, okay, this is the real world.
yeah,
It's not what I imagined the world to be. You know, um, and I think that's where you have that. I don't want to, well, it is a sort of a moment where you realize actually it can be something extraordinary that you've experienced that other people haven't, because it gives you an insight into other people's lives that you
mm,
wouldn't have if you didn't have that sort of level of grief, right?
yeah, I
And then
agree.
and then that becomes the thing that people can, particularly artistically draw upon, or
Yeah,
even philosophically, you can start to, not from this sort of, you know, fluffy stuff that you're saying, that, the positive thinking things that you have to
yeah,
do,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but you start to get something that becomes real, something you can really draw on artistically. And so you obviously have drawn on that. So when did you get that thing where you started to go, right, okay, there's something here that is something I could write about, or I can overcome by writing about it? How long did that take before that started to?
funnily enough, I feel I've always known I've had a story in me. I've Weirdly as well, my beautiful mum always said she had a story in her, and one day she always wanted to write a book. And sadly, the time wasn't there for her to do it. So, and I used to look at her and think, oh gosh, I'd love to read your story, like, because I know she had quite a colourful past, and she didn't have the nicest of upbringings, and that's why she was so wise, because, like you say, she'd been through the pain. She was an alchemist. She had turned her wounds into wisdom, and she was so heart led, but also lots of humour. So I'd do anything to have had that book, my mum's book. And then I always knew I had the story in me from a very colourful past, my awful coping mechanisms, which were the survival mechanisms I used at the time when mum died for a good few years. But I never had that happily ever after. And as in the knight in shining armor who comes and fixes you and saves you, and, you trot off or go off into the sunset together. I didn't have that. And I felt without that, who on earth is going to want to read my story? Um, Funnily enough, through writing my book, I went on holiday about 3 years ago, and I had an experience, an encounter, which some could say was a one night stand that lasted 6 nights. It felt like a honeymoon. It was the most mind blowing connection with a guy. And after that, I came home and I just wrote. I had to just write. And people say that it's almost like it's a cosmic gift or a twin flame where you suddenly meet a soul and they get you onto your soul path. So I had the background story, I had this holiday story. I just didn't have the happily ever after of sorts. So this encounter with that person gave me my happily ever after of sorts, which then, because of the feelings with him, I just started writing them all out on paper. Suddenly I was thinking, gosh, I've almost got a book here. This is crazy. And then I realized I wanted to write the backstory to that particular story. Hence why I've then come up with my Soho Summers series. The first book being Love, Grief, and More Sex Than Pinot. And the second book, which is going to be out this year, is called Soho Summers versus Love, Life, the Universe.
Right.
So yes, so it was a chance encounter 3 years ago that.
So I find this interesting that, you know, we can always go, there is this sort of moment, you know, this meeting, and that I always find interesting that, you know, because we were talking before we started the podcast that I've been doing this at quite a while, right? This podcasting.
Yeah, hats off to you.
Well, you know, I'm a sucker for punishment. No, I'm just not nosy about what people, you know, what people get up to. And because this podcast is about creativity, and that's a very loose sort of frame, obviously, but it means I can interview people that are musicians, you know. Obviously being a guitarist, I know loads of guitar players, but I was like, yeah, well, I don't just want to interview loads of guitarists because that'll get boring, you know, if you're not a guitar player. But it meant that I started to connect with people who wrote books, people who did interesting things, artists, storytellers, journalists. People have got just very creative lives that do different things, you know, maybe not just one creative thing. They've got a whole panoply of stuff that they do. People that did something creative at the beginning and then they stopped because, you know, life got in the way and they had a family and blah, blah, blah. And then they went back to what they did later on. Some people who started late and so on. Now, the interesting point about this is that it's quite frequent in these stories, in these different stories, that people have, you know, a sliding door moment, you know, one of these chance meetings and stuff like that, that utterly transform where they are and changes their mindset. It acts as this catalyst.
Yeah.
But because it sort of only happens once or twice in people's lives, they sort of go, well, you know, it's a coincidence. I just happened to bump into somebody in the middle of London who I knew when I lived in, you know, Rye in Kent or something.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, I was only just thinking about you because so and so is looking for a guitar player. And that becomes the thing that makes their life change, you know. You know, but because that only happens once or twice in somebody's life, they just sort of take it as a coincidental thing. But what happens is that happens frequently in the stories that people tell. Like you're saying, you know, you meet somebody and it's not just that one, you know, a meeting with somebody, that they have an effect that is out of the ordinary.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's an interesting thing, that once you start to see that and you start to go, well, hang on a minute, there is my own story here within this thing. And I think that's one of those things, if people were more aware of those type of happenings, I think they would see them more often, because I actually think they happen quite a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, they might not be quite as dramatic, but on a small level, it's the conversation you have with somebody in a shop, and they just say something to you, and it sticks in your mind, and it pops up a week later, and you go, oh, yeah, I was thinking of, and sometimes you can't even remember who it was that said the thing.
It's very true. Yeah. Yeah.
And it is that sort of thing of being aware of like what what's going on, what the world is sort of throwing at you, sort of thing. So when you got back then, you said you had the story.
Yes.
So when did you get the thing of sitting down to write the story?
Literally, as soon as I walked into my apartment, having got off the plane from this chance encounter, um, I felt I would self-combust if I didn't get my feelings down. And being my children were away at the time with my ex-husband, so I had my two beautiful cats for company, and I had 2 weeks, a free 2 weeks, and knew I'd be missing them terribly. But actually, I am a firm believer that nothing ever happens. Everything happens for a reason. Nothing's coincidence. I feel like I was gifted that time to get the main bulk of the story with that guy onto paper, because I remembered every detail. I wanted to go over every detail. I wanted to enjoy it. And by doing so, and I also, because I've done lots of healing myself, I didn't want to have this encounter of another letting go of somebody that I really cared for it to be a painful experience. I'd done enough work to realize, right, this is a gift. Let's treat this as a gift. Let's work with this. Let's turn this pain into purpose, the pain of saying goodbye to him into purpose, and let's just see where it goes. And now here I am 3 years later. It's literally bonkers, but it's true.
Yeah, no, I get that. Now, the point you've said a couple of interesting things within that, about the fact that
Right.
you didn't want to you wanted to use that. Now,
Mm.
would you say that that comes from the fact that you'd experienced enough pain and stuff for you to arrive at that point of going, no, I've got to do something with this.
I think so. And I think I have, by that stage, I had, when I divorced, my husband and I divorced, which was in 2017, we broke up. From that day onwards, or as the marriage was crumbling in 2016, I threw myself into reading all the self-help books I could, all the spiritual books I could, all the Hayes House, Wayne Dyer, everything and anything, Eckhart Tolle. And I never know if I pronounced that correctly, if it's Eckhart Tolle or Eckhart
Yeah, no, it's
Tolle.
Tolly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I had inside me at that stage, I had undergone a lot of healing. I'd spent probably 7 years of my life literally absorbing all of this, the self-help sort of world out there. I hadn't been drinking for a long time. I'd really, for the sake of my children, they became my rocks and my reason to rise. When the marriage was crumbling, I was like, right, I've got two options here. I either crumble with it and I turn to the drink and I do everything that I did when my mum died, or I was like, no way am I going to do that. No way. Two gorgeous kids. Like my mum was amazing. I want to be the most amazing mum for my two. So they were my rocks and my reason. And I couldn't have worked harder to try to understand myself so that I could turn I suppose, the suffering into meaning. And so that I could, become the alchemist, turning like I said, the wounds into wisdom. So by the time I came back from this particular experience, I knew everything was in my power. It was either I can either be crying for weeks with this and be the victim and, oh God, poor me, la la la. I was like, enough of that. Don't be that person. It's not good for me. It's not good for my kids. It's not, and it's also not honoring this amazing connection I had with him. Like I thought I'd be tainting that. I was like, I want to celebrate it.
Mm,
I don't want the pain.
mm.
I acknowledged the pain. I didn't push it aside. I didn't bury it. I didn't numb it. I felt the pain. I felt it hugely. And with writing, I was able to process the pain of saying goodbye. But I was able to then turn it into part of a book.
Yes, yeah, they're really interesting. Um, I, when I write songs, I'm always looking for that thing where you go, there's the narrative and there's the spark in something.
Mm.
And subsequently, you look to your own experiences of stuff that's happened and you go, oh yeah, this is a story I can tell. And interestingly is when you start then to let go of an emotional element, whether that's, you know, a feeling of love or even a feeling of hatred, whatever
Yeah, yeah.
as an emotion. it sort of supercharges the idea. It's
Yeah.
like well, it's very much like the what the you know you like the ancient Egyptians would do with their figures that represented, Ra or whatever it was, when they're going up and down, they would breathe the spirit into the figure,
Wow.
right? And it's almost like that's what you do with a piece of art that's got a meaning, that's actually
Mm,
rooted not just in a story that's floating around in your head, but it's actually got a real life experience
yeah, I think
thing.
so.
Because somehow it what it sort of does in spirit an idea, it does sort of give it some sort of uh you know just call it some sort of energy or a life force of its own.
Mm.
And I've always been intrigued by things like, and obviously songs because I'm involved in music, but stories that have this ability to become something,
Mm.
that take on a life of its own, that's out of control of the person who's created it. And I'm always been intrigued by, what is going on there. It's not just because, oh, that's a great song. Because sometimes the
Yeah.
songs that really stick out aren't necessarily technically that good, but they just seem to have something that makes them, yeah, live and almost have a consciousness of their own. And you get it
Yeah.
with stories, like,
Mm.
you know, Catcher in the Rye or something like, something that just could be a very small book that just is out of all proportion to the number of words in the book or even the depth of the story. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that what you've expressed there with this thing of, I've got to write this down, is something that people really need to take note of in when they get an idea, that it just it just demands to be expressed.
Yeah,
And then what you've said is that the process of doing that does something to you in return.
very much so.
So you mentioned about the sort of healing process of that,
Mm.
right? I'm going to go back to the stuff about the self-healing books because I think this is, a lot of people have, familiar with some of the names that you came out with there,
Yeah, of
Wayne
course.
Dyer and all that lot. And after a while, you get to a point where you sort of go, yeah, it's more or less the same thing, isn't it? They're more or less saying the same thing as one another. Um, and I had a couple of friends who were writers for that sort of genre of stuff,
Mhm.
and and obviously a lot of those guys, well, they're often guys anyway, apart from Louise Hay, um, but they're often American, aren't they?
They are, yeah, interestingly.
Yes, interestingly. Um, how do you feel when you because I'm intrigued because what you've got with your book is
Mm,
is not the main frame of where they're coming from, obviously, because they're coming from a different place.
yeah,
Um, and it's a little bit sort of tidy and and you know what I mean, and everything you can
mm,
do everything by the power of thought type of idea.
yeah, yeah,
But where do you obviously when you started reading those books, they must have had some sort of impact on you because
yeah.
you know, um, did you feel that after a while they still had that sort of impact?
Do you know, like when I first started reading them, oh my God, I became obsessed actually. I would ask friends, family, like buy all the, I was just everyone and anyone that had a book that they could lend me that was on a particular subject matter, I would take. And like, it was a bit like super glue, like the main messages just began to stick. And as you correctly said, there's a lot of repetitive messages, but also through the power of repetition, it then, for me, it started sinking in. And I could kind of feel myself changing on a cellular level, I suppose. It was actually wonderful because I felt like there was more to life. I'd always felt like I, throughout my career, whatever, because it wasn't to me, it didn't feel like a career. I was lost. Mum had died. I was desperately looking for the love of my life. I was going through the motions with the job, but none of that had meaning. The KPIs, the meetings, I don't know, the goals, everything, just it didn't have any meaning to me. But when I started to read these books, I was like, oh, now oh my God, there is more to life. I always knew there was. And wow, these people, they're giving me some of the answers, and they're explaining, they're just making me understand myself more and making me realize I'm not weird. I'm just perhaps I'm allowed to feel things more intensely maybe than others, or maybe I lean more in towards the energy of things, and I pick up things on, like, you can't quite articulate things, but I feel it. And so those books were sort of an opener for that part of healing for me. And I probably spent 6-7 years of my life reading, and then in the last 3 years I have been completely much more into the meditating, and not guided meditations, but 20 minutes every day, without fail, complete priority. I do not go a day without doing it. 20 minutes, I sit there, put 20 minutes on my phone, eye mask on, earplugs in, and I just sit there in silence. And I just say to whoever this power is, I'm here. I'd love to connect with you, and I'm ready. And then I put a white light of protection around me, blue flame, violet flame of protection around me. And I just sit there. And sometimes I might get little ideas, or something might come through, or it might be a week later and there's a sign, and it's like, my gosh, that has to be a sign for me. Like nobody else, it would not make any sense to anybody else. So I feel like my healing has kind of has evolved. We're beings, we evolve, right? Nothing stays the same. And so I've kind of, the books always have their place, and I'm so grateful for them. And I do still pick them up, and I'll, wax lyrical about all of them and everyone that I have read. But I'm in a slightly different space now. But I wouldn't be in the space I'm in now had it not been for the books. I feel.
So you mentioned a job, your career.
Yes.
So what did you do?
Right. When I came back from Australia, when I had the phone call saying it's back, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. I was 22. I'd got a business studies degree from Sheffield University. Again, that felt nothing to me. I know that sounds awful to say, but it didn't have the meaning behind it to me. I'd go to the lectures. I did my best. I got to 2-1, turned up because I had to. It didn't mean anything to me. So the idea of then getting into the corporate world, I was thrown into it, really. I ended up landing a job in recruitment at Hayes Recruitment. Doing architectural recruitment initially. This was when my mum was very ill, and I was temping there. And then as a result of getting that, I ended up securing a permanent position at a corporate governance recruitment company. And I was recruiting for compliance professionals within the financial services industry.
Right.
I did that for 10 years.
Strangely, I'm familiar with all of that.
Are you?
Yeah. I had a friend
How funny.
I had a couple of friends who were architects and stuff, but I also knew somebody who was in compliance work for various banks and stuff like that.
Yeah, so, maybe I knew them. You never know.
Yeah, quite possible.
Yeah.
Weird. Yeah. So sorry, I interrupted. Carry
on. So I was there for 10 years, and I have nightmares now where I've even mentioned in the book. Obviously, the book's fiction and it's inspired by personal experiences, but there is a section in the book where I'm saying sorry to the idea of it being my old boss, as in, I'm so sorry that I hoodwinked you to be the best candidate for the job, because I did as much as I had to get by there. My sole aim was to find the love of my life. And if that meant going out every night drinking after work, then so be it. If it meant having extended boozy client lunches, so be it. If it meant, I don't know, calling in sick every so often, so be it.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you're the only one who operates like that. Seriously, because the thing that, when you were talking about the self-improvement books, and I said they're mostly American males,
Yeah.
I was thinking about the work culture in America, which is so utterly driven, right? Like you are owned by whoever's employing you at the time until they decide that they don't want you anymore, and then suddenly they just chuck you out. And thinking, well, if your life is completely absorbed, from the American perspective, and we've got a couple of friends who work in that type of world,
Yeah.
you're desperate to find a meaning to life, right? You'd
Yeah,
sort of go,
yeah.
maybe the two things sort of go hand in hand, weirdly. That you particularly if you've gone to university to get the degree, to get the thing, get the job type of thing, and then you get the job and you suddenly go like, actually, I don't like this.
I
You know,
know.
it's interesting. It's interesting, and it's not until something jogs you out of that, like losing your mum,
Yeah.
that everything really then you put up with the thing for long enough to think, well,
Mm,
I've just got to find the way out, and then eventually you do find the way out, but not in the way
yeah,
not the
exactly.
not in the way that you expected the way out
Mm,
to be.
very true.
And I think that's an interesting thing. So my sort of my sort of perspective on art generally, whatever that it is, whether that's writing stories or painting or playing music or whatever, or dance or whatever it is, it's that sort of leveling the playing field, because everything is so consciously driven, right?
Yeah.
You've got to have the answer for the thing. You've got to meet this deadline. You've got to meet this target, and all the rest of
Mm,
it. And then to step out of that and go, well, actually, the universe doesn't work like that.
I know.
It's a completely different thing. I mean, this is just sort of, you know, human sphere type of
It's
stuff,
so true. Yeah.
where we're trying to make meaning out of stuff, and most jobs are pointless.
I know.
You're
Money
not,
driven, greed, control,
yeah,
manipulation, power.
but often you're not doing anything of any value in a job, particularly the more money you get paid.
Mm,
Often apart from medicine and all the rest of it, but you get my meaning that a lot of people who are doing, they're pushing paper around, and well, not so
mm,
much now, but you know what I mean. They're not actually making the thing or growing the thing
yeah,
or
yeah,
fixing the thing. They're actually organizing the thing that it's the,
yeah.
you know, and you think it's a bizarre, bizarre world until you get to that chance that you can step back and go, yeah, it's a bit of a joke, really. So, this sort of bit of a cosmic joke
Yes.
being played. And weirdly, that when those events come at you, and I know you haven't said this, but you can look at the situation with dealing, your mother dying, and then dealing with that and all the grief and the heartache and what you have to do to survive,
Mm,
and then get to the point where you start to do more than survive. You start to thrive.
yeah.
You build a family, and then you start to reflect on how you are as a mother, and that's to do with the fact that your mother was your mother, and
Yes.
and all
Yeah.
of that, and it starts to put the jigsaw puzzle back together again. That you get a clearer picture of what life's sort of about, you know.
Yeah.
And art plays an important part of that, doesn't it? The creative thing.
Mm.
So tell me about tell me about the book, because obviously you've, I know this from experience, putting a book together. It's not just writing the story, it's doing the umpteen different drafts, getting somebody to copy,
Mm.
read the copy and get all the formatting done and all the rest of it. And it's just a complicated thing.
It
So
is.
tell me a little bit about how you got around all these things.
You know what? Gosh, I'm so the lovely thing. One of the things through writing this book, and one of the big things, lessons that I definitely I knew I had to learn was self-love. And funnily enough, again, the universe works in the most mysterious, beautiful ways. Through writing the book, through creating this lead character called Soho Summers, through seeing her stumble through such similar sticky situations that I once stumbled through, and getting up every time, I've fallen in love with her. So it's amazing because the book, I love the character. And because I'm self-publishing, which again is wonderful because it means I can get my authentic voice in my book. And
Yeah.
it is naughty. It's very naughty. It's fun. It's very raw. It's very human. It's got everything in it. People will laugh, cry, feel all the feels. It's my heart on the pages. And but with the self-publishing, I've had to, find the editor, the cover designer, the proofreader, set up my own website, put it all up on this thing, one of the systems that then gets it up onto Amazon and KDP. Like there's so much. And again, I did have a cry in the shower the other day because I just submitted send to my editor for the second book that's coming out at the end of the year. And that felt such a monumental moment because I've been working so hard on that. Everyone's just seeing my stuff about the first book, but behind the scenes, there's so much work going on. You know, it's 4 o'clock starts, it's 11 p.m. finishes. It's also being the best mum I can be to the 2 kids. And I always want to be a very present mummy to them because my mum was to me, and time is the biggest gift of all. So I throw my heart and soul into those babies. So then I'm also getting the book sorted, and there's been such a lot to learn. So again, it's the self-love thing because I'm actually really proud of myself. I think, wow, if you'd told me 3 years ago, I'd be on this podcast, I'd be sat here, I'd have one book in front of me, another one in the process, you know, and I would have found my voice and I'd have gone through, I'm in the healing journey. I'd have healed so much. I know there's always more, but I've done a lot of it. And now I can talk about it because I've been there, I've done it, I've worked my way through it. I've been in the dark, I'm finding my way to the light, and I can hopefully inspire hope in others who might be struggling that it's okay. You will all get there. Just follow your heart. Tune in.
Yeah, exactly.
You.
There's an interesting thing about, I with people that I teach and stuff, I say one of the superpowers that you need is to be naive. If you sit down and try to work out, what's the chances of this happening and that happening, you wouldn't even start. You've got to get stuck in and just do the thing with the idea of where you're going, however irrational or whatever, because otherwise this doesn't happen. And as you say, you don't know where you're going to end up. That's the point.
No idea.
Yeah, exactly. In reflection, you go like, that's amazing, But because it's all slow, it's not necessarily slow steps, but you know what I mean. And they're not always incremental either.
No.
You do this and you struggle with something, and then the next thing you know, you're suddenly at the next level, and you don't know how you got there. Things sort of fit together. But it is that thing about you've got to start, haven't you? And you've got to keep with it. And also, it's when the things go wrong.
Yes.
That suddenly you go like, oh, okay, and then you learn another skill, and there are loads of things that go wrong. I know that you've probably had your fair share of thinking, oh God, what do I do now? Because it's inevitable, isn't it? Right. So that's cool. Now you've got when's the launch of this? Because you actually got a launch date, and I
have. It's so exciting. Sorry, I'm very excited about it. So it's actually going live on Amazon on the 16th of April. However, it will be ready for pre-order within the next week. But I'm also doing a proper book launch at the Bournemouth Writers' Festival on the 26th of April. It's at Patch in Bournemouth. At 1 o'clock, I'm on a talk, and there's 4 authors that are talking about their year of getting from messy manuscript to published novel. And then I've got a half an hour slot at 3:30 where I'll be reading a couple of extracts from my book, answering questions, and doing some book signing. So that sounds so exciting. And the lovely thing with that is last year I went to the Bournemouth Writers' Festival as a paying client, and it was there. I had this messy manuscript. I didn't quite know what to do with it. It was there that I met amazing editor Gary Dawkin. I was told then about the cover designers, the proofreaders. Like I met all these people that suddenly I could, because I've met them in person, I'd seen them on stage speaking about their things. It didn't feel scary to call them up or to go and chat to them. And it was a little bit like the universe was just saying, here you go. Go to this Bournemouth Writers' Festival and you'll meet everyone there who's going to help you. And they've helped phenomenally. I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't have used their help. And I can't thank them enough. So it was lovely when I applied to the Bournemouth Writers' Festival to launch my book there this year. and say it's a full circle moment, because last year I came and I was very naive and green around the edges, and this year I'm there. I've got my book. It's crazy, like, but yeah, wonderful. So then the guy Dominic Wan, who heads up the Bournemouth Rice Festival, he's fantastic. The energy there is brilliant. It's very organic, very open. Everyone's really championing each other, and yeah, it's a brilliant place to go. I think they probably have about 4,000 to 5,000 people will be going there over the course of the weekend. So I feel very privileged that I'm part of that.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. And again, as you say, that's only a year.
That's a year. I mean, there was a lot of writing before that,
Oh
but
yeah,
last
no.
year
But I
it
mean,
was,
even if you think about that, we
yeah.
often sort of go like, as I say, none of this stuff is linear. You'll get a moment where suddenly, within a day or so, things could be totally transformed. It's just because a couple of phone calls. It's amazing. Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, well, that's a fabulous chat.
Yeah, thank you very much. I feel very honoured.
No, no,
Thank
I
you for
don't
taking
know.
the
It's just,
time.
just I'm just sort of, as I say, I'm just nosy. So, um, so best of luck with everything, because
Thank you.
that's been quite a journey, and and I'm sure that this is going to lead on to other things, obviously, because you're so enthusiastic about what you're doing and how you talk about your work, and that would inspire a lot of people.
Yeah.
So when you do when you do the thing in Bournemouth, and that's only, crikey, not very far away, is it?
But a month. A month today,
Yeah.
crazily enough. Yeah, a month today.
Oh my God,
Wow.
extraordinary.
Must
Well,
be on my best behavior, especially keeping it PG rated when I'm talking about my book at the beginning. I've got to be quite,
yes,
what's the word? Clever about which extracts I'm going to read.
yes, exactly,
Keep them child
exactly.
friendly. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay, that's great.
Thank
So
you.
lovely to chat.
And you. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
cheers then.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.